Welcome to Podcast English Learning. Today, we're diving into one of the most mysterious and misunderstood topics, black magic. Hello everyone. Black magic, also known as dark magic, is a term that's been around for centuries. It's often associated with malevolent forces, curses, and the supernatural. But what is black magic really? Is it just a myth? Or is there some truth behind the fear and fascination? The small village of Eldermore sat nestled between dark forests and mist-covered hills, a place where time seemed to stand still. The villagers were simple folk, living their lives in quiet routine, tending to their fields and flocks, and gathering around the fire at night to share stories. But beneath the surface of this peaceful existence, there was an undercurrent of fear, an ancient dread that had been passed down through generations. It was the fear of black magic. Long before the village of Eldermore was founded, the land was believed to be cursed. The stories told of a time when the forests were home to powerful sorcerers who practiced the darkest forms of magic. These sorcerers, it was said, had made pacts with malevolent spirits, trading their souls for the ability to control the elements, summon demons, and cast terrible curses on those who crossed them. The most feared of these sorcerers was a woman named Morgana, whose name was still whispered with reverence and terror in the quiet corners of the village. Morgana was said to have lived in a time when the world was young, a time when the veil between the living and the dead was thin, and the spirits of the earth still walked among men. She was born under a blood moon, a sign that she was destined for a life of darkness. From an early age, she displayed an unnatural affinity for the occult. While other children played in the fields, Morgana spent her days in the depths of the forest, communing with spirits and learning the ancient rites of black magic. As she grew older, her power only increased. The villagers spoke of strange lights flickering in the woods at night and of unnatural sounds that echoed through the trees. Whispers carried on the wind, cries of unseen creatures, and the low, rumbling chants of ancient incantations. It was said that Morgana could summon storms with a single word, that she could call down lightning to strike her enemies, and that she could twist the minds of men, bending them to her will. But it was her mastery of curses that truly set her apart. Morgana's curses were feared throughout the land, for they were said to be unbreakable, a mark of doom that no man could escape. The stories told of men who had angered her, only to be struck down by terrible misfortune. Crops that withered and died overnight, livestock that fell sick and wasted away, children who were born deformed or who died before their time. There were even whispers of a curse so powerful that it could reach beyond the grave, binding a man's soul to the earth and trapping him in an eternity of torment. People of Eldermore knew better than to speak her name aloud. It was said that to do so was to invite her wrath. Instead, they referred to her only as the Witch of the Woods, and they avoided the forest after dark, leaving offerings at the edge of the trees in the hopes of appeasing her. For years, the village lived in fear of Morgana and the dark power she wielded. But over time, as generations passed and the memory of her deeds faded, the fear began to dissipate. The village grew, and the people began to forget the stories of the Witch of the Woods. The forest became just another part of the landscape, a place where children played and hunters sought game. Morgana became a legend, a story to frighten children on cold winter nights. Nothing more. But legends have a way of resurfacing when they are least expected. And the darkness that had once been confined to the shadows of the forest was about to seep back into the lives of the people of Eldermore. It began with small things, crops that failed for no apparent reason, livestock that fell ill and died despite the best efforts of the village healer, strange noises in the night that kept the villagers awake and filled them with a nameless dread. Villagers, who had long since stopped believing in the old stories, tried to find rational explanations for these events. Perhaps the weather had been too harsh, or the soil had become depleted. Perhaps a wild animal was stalking the village at night. But as the incidents continued, and as they grew in frequency and severity, it became harder to dismiss them as mere coincidence. Then the children started to disappear. First to go was little Elsie, the daughter of the blacksmith. She had been playing near the edge of the forest, gathering wildflowers for her mother when she vanished without a trace. The villagers searched for days, scouring the forest and the surrounding hills. There was no sign of her. No tracks, no clothing, nothing. It was as if she had simply been swallowed by the earth. Next was Tomas, the son of the village miller. He had been sent to fetch water from the stream that ran through the forest. But when he didn't return, his father went looking for him. All he found was the bucket, lying on its side in the middle of the path, the water soaking into the ground. And then, as if to confirm the villagers' worst fears, came the third disappearance. Lena, the healer's apprentice, who had been tending to a sick cow in the barn when she too vanished without a trace. Panic began to spread through the village. The old stories, which had once been dismissed as mere superstition, were now being whispered again, this time with a sense of urgency and fear. The elders spoke of the Witch of the Woods, of her terrible power and her hunger for revenge. Some said that Morgana had returned from the dead, that her spirit had been awakened by the desecration of the forest, and that she was now exacting her revenge on the descendants of those who had wronged her. Others believed that she had never truly died, that she had simply gone into hiding, biding her time until the world had forgotten her, and that now she was ready to reclaim what was hers. The village was in turmoil, with fear and suspicion tearing at the fabric of the once close-knit community. People began to turn on one another, accusing their neighbors, harboring the witch, or of being in league with her. The village priest, Father Gregory, tried to calm the people, urging them to put their faith in God and to resist the lure of superstition. But even he could not deny the signs, the strange occurrences, the unexplainable disappearances, the sense of impending doom hung over the village like a dark cloud. It was Father Gregory who finally decided to confront the darkness that had descended upon Eldermore. Gathering a group of the village's bravest men, he ventured into the forest, determined to find the source of the evil that had plagued them. They were armed with torches and crosses, holy water and prayers, but as they ventured deeper into the woods, their resolve began to waver. The trees seemed to close in around them, the shadows growing longer and darker with each step. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, and the silence was broken only by the sound of their own footsteps and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. They walked for what felt like hours, the forest growing darker and more oppressive with each passing moment. Just as they were about to turn back, they stumbled upon a clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a stone altar, covered in strange symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. The air around the altar seemed to hum with energy, a low, vibrating sound that made the hair on the back of their necks stand on end. Father Gregory stepped forward, raising his cross and beginning to recite a prayer. As he did, the humming grew louder, the symbols on the altar glowing brighter. The men with him could feel the ground trembling beneath their feet, the air growing colder and heavier. But Father Gregory continued, his voice steady and strong, the words of the prayer filling the clearing with a sense of calm and peace. Then, with a deafening crack, the altar split in two, sending a shockwave through the clearing that knocked the men off their feet. As they scrambled to their feet, they saw a figure emerging from the shadows. Tall, gaunt woman with long, dark hair and eyes that glowed with an otherworldly light. It was Morgana. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, but it carried across the clearing with the weight of 1,000 years. "You dared to defy me?" she asked, her eyes narrowing as she looked at Father Gregory. "You, who are nothing but a servant of a false god?" Father Gregory raised his cross again, but Morgana merely laughed, cold, bitter sound that sent shivers down their spines. "Your faith is powerless here," she said, raising her hand. As she did, the cross in Father Gregory's hand began to burn, the wood charring and smoking until he was forced to drop it. The men watched in horror as Morgana stepped forward, her eyes locked on Father Gregory. But before she could reach him, blinding light filled the clearing, forcing them to shield their eyes. When the light faded, Morgana was gone, leaving behind only the broken altar and the lingering sense of dread. The men returned to the village, shaken and terrified by what they had seen. Father Gregory, though weakened, vowed to protect the village from Morgana's wrath. believing that the light that had driven her away was a sign of divine intervention. But the disappearances continued, and the village's fear only grew. Rumors spread that Morgana had cursed the village, that she would not rest until her revenge was complete. The villagers became more desperate, turning to old rituals and superstitions in a bid to protect themselves. They began to make offerings to the spirits of the forest, to seek the help of local shamans and mystics, hoping to appease the vengeful witch and lift the curse that hung over them. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the village of Eldermoor was consumed by its fear. Past. The once peaceful community became a place of suspicion and anxiety. The bonds that had held them together for so long, now frayed and fragile. The shadows of the forest seemed to grow longer and darker, whispers of the old stories growing louder and more insistent. And through it all, Morgana watched from the darkness, her eyes glowing with a cold, unfeeling light. Her revenge was not yet complete, and she would not rest until the village of Eldermoor had paid the price for its transgression. People of the village could only hope that, in the end, they would find a way to overcome the darkness that had once again claimed their lives, and that they would be able to restore the peace that had been so cruelly taken from them. The village of Eldermoor, now overshadowed by fear and uncertainty, saw its once familiar routines disrupted. The remaining villagers, despite their attempts to stay hopeful, were gripped by a sense of impending doom. They gathered in small groups, sharing their theories and recounting the events that had transpired, their conversations filled with a mix of terror and disbelief. Fields lay fallow, the mills stood still, and the once bustling marketplace was now eerily quiet. In the midst of this turmoil, a young woman named Eliza emerged as a beacon of hope. Eliza was the daughter of the village blacksmith, known for her strength and resilience. She had grown up hearing the old stories, but had always dismissed them as mere legends. Now, faced with the very reality of those tales, she found herself determined to uncover the truth behind Morgana's return and to protect her home from the encroaching darkness. Eliza's quest began with a visit to the village elder, Old Man Thomas, who had lived in Eldermoor longer than anyone else. He was a repository of the village's lore and history, and Eliza hoped he might shed some light on the mystery. Thomas lived on the edge of the village in a modest, weathered house surrounded by books and ancient scrolls. The old man welcomed Eliza with a weary smile. "You seek answers, I see," he said as he led her to his cluttered study, where the smell of aged parchment and ink filled the air. "Yes, Elder Thomas," Eliza replied. "I need to understand more about Morgana. What do we know about her?" Thomas settled into his creaky chair, gaze distant. Morgana was feared not just for her magic, but for her ability to exploit human weaknesses. She thrived on fear and despair, manipulating it to her advantage. The stories speak of her becoming more powerful by feeding off the suffering of those around her. Her return is a sign that our fear has given her strength. Eliza listened intently. But why now? What has awakened her after all these years? Thomas's eyes grew somber. The forest has been disturbed. Perhaps it was the expansion of the village or the disregard for old customs. Morgana's power is linked to the natural world, and any disruption can provoke her wrath. Determined to learn more, Eliza decided to investigate the forest herself. Armed with a lantern, a small knife, and a sense of purpose, she ventured into the woods. Forest, once familiar and comforting, now seemed alien and menacing. Trees stood like dark sentinels, their branches twisting into grotesque shapes in the dim light of her lantern. She followed the path that led to the clearing, where the altar had been found, hoping to discover something that might explain Morgana's anger. As she walked, she noticed strange markings on the trees. Symbols she had never seen before. They seemed to pulse with an eerie light, as though they were alive. When Eliza reached the clearing, she found the remains of the altar. The stone slab was cracked, and the symbols etched into it were faded but still visible. She knelt beside the altar, carefully examining the carvings. They depicted scenes of rituals and sacrifices, and one symbol in particular caught her attention, a sigil that resembled an eye surrounded by flames. Suddenly, the ground beneath her shifted, and a faint rumbling sound filled the air. Eliza jumped to her feet, heart pounding. The shadows in the clearing seemed to writhe and dance, and she felt an oppressive weight pressing down on her. From the darkness emerged a figure, a man, tall and gaunt, with eyes that glowed like embers. He wore tattered robes and had an aura of malevolence. Eliza recognized him from the stories. He was one of Morgana's followers, a dark practitioner of the same forbidden arts. "Why do you trespass here, child?" the figure intoned, his voice like the rustle of dead leaves. Eliza squared her shoulders, trying to mask her fear. "I seek to understand Morgana's curse. What is it that you want?" The figure's eyes flickered with amusement. "Understanding is not what you will find here. This place is a conduit for dark forces. Morgana's power is awakening, and soon the village will know true despair." Before Eliza could respond, the figure vanished into the shadows, leaving her alone in the clearing. She felt a chill creep down her spine, but she knew she could not give in to fear. She took a deep breath and made her way back to the village, her mind racing with thoughts of what she had seen. Back in Eldermoor, the villagers were growing more desperate. Disappearances continued, and the atmosphere became increasingly tense. Rumors spread that the forest was cursed and that no one was safe. Father Gregory organized nightly vigils, praying for protection and guidance, but the sense of dread only seemed to deepen. Eliza shared her findings with Father Gregory and Elder Thomas. They gathered a small group of villagers who were willing to stand against the darkness. Together, they began to prepare for a confrontation with Morgana. They sought ancient texts and consulted with mystics who had knowledge of dark magic, hoping to find a way to counteract the curse. As the days turned into weeks, Eliza and her companions worked tirelessly. They conducted rituals to cleanse the forest and protect the village, and they sought out any clues that might reveal a way to weaken Morgana's power. They discovered that Morgana's strength was tied to the altar and the symbols that had been etched into it. If they could find a way to reverse or neutralize these symbols, they might be able to break the curse. One night, as Eliza and her group were working late into the evening, a fierce storm rolled in. Lightning cracked through the sky, and thunder rumbled like a distant war drum. The storm seemed to mirror the turmoil within the village. The wind howled through the trees, and the rain beat down in torrents. Eliza, drenched and exhausted, sat by the fire with Father Gregory and Elder Thomas, studying the ancient text. Suddenly, the door to their small shelter burst open, and a figure stumbled in, covered in mud and rain. It was Eliza's friend, Michael, who had been missing for weeks. Michael was disoriented and weak, his eyes wide with fear. "They're coming," he gasped. "The spirits of the forest, they're angry. Morgana is drawing them to the village." Eliza's heart raced. She knew that they were running out of time. The village was on the brink of collapse, and if they didn't act soon, they would be consumed by the darkness. Father Gregory led the group in a final, desperate ritual to cleanse the forest and break the curse. They gathered in the clearing where the altar had once stood, chanting incantations and performing ancient rites. The wind howled around them, and the shadows seemed to come alive, swirling and twisting in response to their actions. As they completed the ritual, a blinding light filled the clearing. The symbols on the altar began to glow, then dissolve, as if being erased by an unseen force. The air grew still, and the oppressive weight that had hung over the village began to lift. In the days that followed, villagers slowly began to recover. The disappearances ceased, and the sense of dread that had gripped the village began to fade. The forest, though still dark and mysterious, seemed less menacing. Villagers were cautiously optimistic that the curse had been lifted and that they could rebuild their lives. Eliza, though weary, felt a sense of accomplishment. She had faced the darkness and fought to protect her home. The village of Eldermoor would never be the same, but it had survived the darkness that had threatened to consume it. As the sun rose over the village, casting its golden light across the fields and the forest, Eliza stood at the edge of the woods, looking out over the land she had fought so hard to save. The forest still held its mysteries, but the darkness that had once lurked within had been pushed back, at least for now. Eliza knew that the stories of Morgana would continue to be told. Reminder of the darkness could lurk in the shadows, But she also knew that the strength and courage of the villagers had brought them through the storm. And so, the village of Eldermore began to heal. Its people united by the trials they had faced. The forest, though still a place of wonder and mystery, was no longer a source of fear. The darkness had been driven away, and the village looked forward to a future where the past would remain just that. A story, a legend, no longer a threat. As the weeks passed, Eldermore began to recover from the trials it had faced. The village returned to its routines, fields being replanted, animals being tended to, and the marketplace once again bustling with activity. The atmosphere, though still tinged with the remnants of the recent fear, began to shift toward a more hopeful and optimistic tone. Eliza continued to play a crucial role in the village's recovery. Her bravery and determination had made her a respected figure among the villagers. She worked alongside Father Gregory and Elder Thomas to ensure that the forest was protected and that the village's newfound peace was maintained. They implemented new customs and rituals to honor and appease the spirits of the forest, hoping to prevent any future disturbances. One evening, as Eliza walked through the village, she noticed a young girl named Lily standing by the edge of the forest, gazing into the trees with a look of wonder. Lily had been one of the children who had disappeared and was miraculously found unharmed. Her return had been a cause for great relief and celebration among the villagers. Seeing her now, Eliza approached with a warm smile. "Lily, what are you doing out here?" Eliza asked gently. Lily turned, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and curiosity. "I'm just looking at the forest," she said softly. "I want to understand it better now that it's not so scary anymore." Eliza knelt beside her, taking in the girl's earnest expression. "It's good to be curious," she said. "The forest is full of mysteries, but it's important to remember that we need to respect it. The balance between us and nature is delicate, and we must always be mindful of that." Lily nodded, her gaze returning to the trees. "I want to learn more about the stories and the old magic," she said. Eliza's heart warmed at Lily's enthusiasm. "I'm sure we can find a way for you to learn more," she replied. "Perhaps we can gather the village children and share the stories with them, so they can understand both the wonders and the dangers of the forest." The idea resonated with Father Gregory and Elder Thomas, who agreed that educating the next generation about the forest's mysteries could help prevent future fears and misunderstandings. Together, they began organizing gatherings where they would tell the old stories and teach the children about the history and significance of the forest. As the village adjusted to its new normal, Eliza began to focus on her own personal growth and development. She felt a deep sense of responsibility for the future of Eldermore and wanted to ensure that the mistakes of the past were not repeated. She studied ancient texts, seeking knowledge about the natural world and the ancient practices that had once been part of their heritage. She hoped to bridge the gap between the old ways and the present, creating a harmonious balance that would benefit the village. One day, as Eliza was walking through the forest, she stumbled upon an old, overgrown path that she had never noticed before. Curious, she followed it, her footsteps crunching softly on the fallen leaves. The path led to a hidden grove, bathed in dappled sunlight. The center of the grove was a small, ancient stone well, covered in vines and moss. Eliza approached the well, intrigued by its appearance. She could feel a faint, comforting energy emanating from it, as though it held a piece of the forest's ancient magic. She carefully cleared the vines and dirt from around the well, revealing intricate carvings that seemed to tell a story of the forest's history. As she examined the carvings, she felt a sense of connection to the past. The well seemed to be a symbol of the forest's enduring presence, a reminder of the balance that must be maintained between the natural and the human worlds. Eliza felt a renewed sense of purpose. She realized that while the immediate threat of Morgana had been quelled, there was still much work to be done to ensure the long-term harmony of the village and the forest. Eliza returned to the village with a newfound determination. She shared her discovery with Father Gregory and Elder Thomas, and together they decided to preserve the well as a symbol of their commitment, protecting the forest and honoring its ancient magic. They held a ceremony to consecrate the well, marking it as a place of respect and reflection. The villagers gathered for the ceremony, coming together to celebrate their renewed connection with the forest. Eliza spoke to them about the importance of understanding and respecting the natural world, and the people listened, rapt attention. The ceremony was a moving reminder of the village's resilience and unity. As the seasons changed and the village settled into its new routines, Eliza continued to work on strengthening the bonds between the villagers and the forest. She organized festivals and gatherings that celebrated the natural cycles and honored the spirits of the forest. The village slowly began to thrive again, its people finding joy in their daily lives and in their connection to the land. One winter evening, as snow gently fell upon Eldermore, Eliza stood at the edge of the forest, looking out over the village. The once dark woods now seemed peaceful and serene, a place of quiet beauty rather than fear. She thought of all that they had endured and of the future that lay ahead. In the distance, the village lights glowed warmly, a symbol of hope and resilience. Eliza knew that the forest would always hold its mysteries. With respect and understanding, the village had found a way to coexist with the magic and the shadows that lingered within. As she turned to head back to the village, Eliza felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. She had helped her home find its way back to the light. The story of Morgana had become a part of their history, a reminder of the past, but it was also a testament to the strength and courage of those who had faced the darkness and found a way to bring back the light. Eldermore would always remember the trials it had faced, but it would also remember the lessons learned and the strength found in unity. The village, and Eliza herself, had grown from the experience, and the future looked bright, the promise of continued harmony between the people and the forest. And so, as the snow continued to fall and the village of Eldermore settled into the quiet of winter, Eliza knew that the balance between light and darkness, between fear and hope, was a delicate one, but one that they would continue to uphold with vigilance and care. As spring arrived, Eldermore awoke from its winter slumber with renewed vigor. The snow melted away, revealing vibrant green fields and budding trees. The villagers, inspired by their recent trials, embraced the new season with a sense of rejuvenation. They worked together to repair and enhance their homes, plant new crops, and celebrate the rebirth of the land. Eliza found herself at the heart of these activities. Her role as a community leader had solidified, and she was deeply involved in organizing the village's seasonal festival. This festival was to be a celebration of their triumph over darkness and a reaffirmation of their connection, the natural world. Festival preparations were a communal effort. Villagers decorated the streets with colorful banners and flowers, set up stalls with food and crafts, and organized games and performances for the children. The highlight of the festival would be a ceremonial dance around the well, symbolizing their gratitude and commitment to the harmony between their lives and the forest. As the day of the festival approached, Eliza made one last visit to the hidden grove where the ancient well stood. She had become quite attached to the place, seeing it as a beacon of hope and resilience. The grove, now cleaned and maintained, was a serene spot where she often went to reflect and find inspiration. On this particular visit, she noticed a figure standing by the well. It was an old woman dressed in simple yet elegant clothes. Her presence was both calm and commanding. Eliza approached cautiously, sensing that this woman was no ordinary traveler. "Greetings," Eliza called out. "I didn't expect to find anyone here." The old woman turned, her eyes sparkling with wisdom and kindness. "Greetings, Eliza," she said, her voice gentle. "I have been waiting for you." Eliza was taken aback. "Do we know each other?" The woman smiled. "In a way, we do. I am Leora, keeper of the ancient ways. I have come to offer my guidance." Eliza's curiosity was piqued. "What guidance do you offer?" Leora looked around the grove with a knowing smile. "This place is powerful, a link between the realms of the seen and the unseen. Forest holds many secrets, and while you have done much to restore balance, there is still more to be done." Eliza listened intently as Leora continued. "Morgana's influence may have waned, but her legacy has left scars. The forest needs healing beyond mere rituals. Ancient magic here is delicate, It must be respected and nurtured. "What can we do?" Eliza asked. Leora walked towards the well and placed her hands on its sides. "You have already begun by honoring the well and maintaining the balance. Now it is time to strengthen the bonds between your people and the land. Share the knowledge of the old ways, not as a source of fear, but as a guide for living in harmony." Eliza nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "I will do everything I can." "Good," Leora said. "I will assist you. There are rituals and practices that have been lost over the centuries. Together, we can rediscover and integrate them into your village's life." With Leora's guidance, Eliza and the villagers embarked on a new chapter of their journey. They worked with Leora to develop a series of ceremonies and teachings that would honor the forest and its ancient magic. These practices included offerings of gratitude, ceremonies to celebrate the changing seasons, and educational sessions about the forest's history and significance. The festival arrived, and it was more magnificent than anyone had anticipated. The village square was alive with activity, filled with laughter, music, and the aroma of delicious foods. The ceremonial dance around the well was the centerpiece of the festival. Eliza, dressed in a ceremonial robe, led the dance, with Leora by her side. As the villagers danced, their movements graceful and rhythmic, they sang songs of gratitude and reverence for the forest. The well seemed to glow with a soft, welcoming light, and the air was filled with a sense of peace and harmony. The festival was a resounding success, a symbol of the village's commitment to maintaining balance and honoring their connection with the natural world. The ceremonies and teachings introduced by Leora became an integral part of village life, fostering a deeper understanding and respect. As the seasons continued to change, Eldermore thrived. The villagers lived in harmony with the land, their lives enriched by the ancient practices and the wisdom passed down through generations. Eliza, now a respected leader and guardian of the village's traditions, continued to work alongside Leora, ensuring that the lessons learned from their trials would not be forgotten. The forest, once a place of fear, became a source of inspiration and wonder. Eldermore's relationship with the land was no longer defined by fear of the unknown, but by a mutual respect and appreciation for the mysteries it held. The village had grown stronger and more united, bound together by their shared experiences and the lessons learned from their past. Years later, as Eliza walked through the now vibrant and flourishing forest, she reflected on the journey they had undertaken. The dark days of Morgana seemed like a distant memory, overshadowed by the light and harmony that now characterized their lives. Eliza knew that the forest would always hold its mysteries, but she also knew that with respect, understanding, and unity, they could navigate its depths and ensure that their relationship with the natural world remained balanced and harmonious. And so, the story of Eldermore and its trials became a legend, a tale passed down through generations as a reminder of the strength and resilience of those who had faced the darkness and emerged into the light. The village continued to thrive, its people living in harmony with the land, guided by the wisdom of the past and the promise of a hopeful future. Absolutely. Let's continue. As the years rolled by, Eldermore became a beacon of balance and harmony, known far and wide for its reverence for the natural world and its storied history. The village continued to prosper under the careful stewardship of Eliza and her successors, carried on the traditions and teachings that had become integral to their way of life. Eliza's influence extended beyond the village as word of Eldermore's recovery and its new practices spread to neighboring regions. Scholars, mystics, and curious travelers aimed to witness the village's unique harmony with the forest and learn from its experiences. Eliza welcomed them with open arms, sharing the village's story and the lessons they had learned. One autumn, a delegation from a nearby town called Ashbury arrived, led by a young woman named Miranda. Miranda was a scholar of folklore and ancient magic, and she had heard of Eldermore's success in overcoming the curse of Morgana. Intrigued, she sought to learn more about how the village had achieved such a profound transformation. Eliza met Miranda at the edge of the village, greeting her warmly. "Welcome to Eldermore. We are honored by your visit." Miranda smiled, her eyes reflecting a mix of curiosity and admiration. "Thank you, Eliza. I have heard much about your village and its remarkable story. I hope to learn from your experiences and perhaps find ways to apply your wisdom in my own community. Over the next few days, Miranda immersed herself in village life, attending the ceremonies and rituals that had become a cornerstone of Eldermore's culture. She spoke with the villagers, listened to their stories, and participated in the educational sessions about the forest and its magic. Eliza took Miranda on a tour of the village, showing her the well that had become a symbol of their connection with the forest. They walked through the lush fields, vibrant with the colors of the changing season, and visited the forest itself, where they held a small ceremony of thanks to honor the spirits of the land. Miranda was deeply impressed by the village's dedication and the seamless integration of ancient practices into daily life. Your community has achieved something truly remarkable, she said to Eliza. It's not just about overcoming fear, but embracing a new way of living that honors and respects the world around you. Eliza nodded. It's been a journey of learning and growth. We've come to understand that balance is key, and that the forest is both a source of wonder and a reminder of the delicate relationship we must maintain with nature. As Miranda prepared to return to Ashbury, she and Eliza shared a moment of reflection. I hope to take what I've learned here and help my own community find a path of balance and respect, Miranda said. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Eliza smiled. It's been a pleasure. May your journey be fruitful, and may the lessons of Eldermore inspire positive change. Miranda left Eldermore with a renewed sense of purpose, carrying the village's story and practices to new places. In Ashbury, she began to implement changes based on what she had learned, fostering a greater appreciation for the natural world and encouraging her community to seek balance in their own lives. As the years continued, Eldermore remained a vibrant, thriving village, a testament to the resilience and strength of people. The traditions established by Eliza and her successors became a source of inspiration for many, and the village's story was celebrated as an example how communities could overcome darkness and find harmony. Eliza, now older and wiser, took on the role of mentor to a new generation of leaders. She shared her experiences with young villagers, teaching them about the importance of balance, respect for nature, and the value of unity. The village continued to grow, and its influence reached beyond its borders, touching the lives of those who heard its tale. One winter evening, as the village prepared for its annual Festival of Lights, Eliza stood at the edge of the forest, gazing at the snow-covered landscape. The once foreboding woods now seemed serene and beautiful, a reflection of the harmony that had been achieved. She thought of Morgana and the trials they had faced, remembering the dark days but also the strength and courage that had led them to the light. The forest had become a place of peace and inspiration, a symbol of the balance they had worked so hard to achieve. As the festival began, the village square was illuminated, colorful lanterns and festive decorations. The air was filled with music, laughter, and the aroma of delicious food. Villagers and visitors alike joined in the celebrations, dancing and singing in gratitude for the harmony they had found. Eliza joined in the festivities, her heart full of contentment. She watched as the younger generations carried on the traditions, knowing that the legacy of Eldermore would continue to thrive. The village's story had become a living testament to the power of resilience and the importance of honoring the natural world. As the night wore on and the festival came to a close, Eliza stood by the well once more, its waters reflecting the twinkling lights of the village. She felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that the balance between light and darkness had been achieved and that the future of Eldermore was bright. The village had come full circle, its story a reminder of the strength found in unity, the wisdom gained through adversity, and the enduring connection between people and the land. Eldermore, with its vibrant community and harmonious existence, stood as a beacon of hope and inspiration, its legacy a guiding light for generations to come. As the village of Eldermore settled into its winter rhythm, Eliza reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The challenges they had faced, the darkness they had overcome, and the wisdom they had gained had shaped the village into a place of enduring strength and harmony. Festival lights had dimmed, and the villagers returned to their homes, their hearts warmed by the celebration and the sense of community. Eliza took a final walk through the village, her gaze resting on the familiar faces of her neighbors and the lively homes that now brimmed with joy and contentment. In the quiet of the night, as the first snowflakes of a new season began to fall, Eliza found herself at the edge of the forest once more. The snow lay thick on the ground, and the trees stood silent, their branches adorned with a dusting of white. She could feel the gentle, soothing presence of the forest, testament to the balance they had achieved. Eliza knew that the forest would always be a place of mystery and wonder. It was a realm where the old stories and the natural world intertwined, reminding them of the delicate balance they must maintain. The village had learned to respect and cherish the forest, and in return, it had become a place of peace and inspiration. As she stood there, Eliza thought about the future. She imagined the village growing and thriving, its story becoming a cherished legend passed down through generations. Eldermore's legacy would endure, a symbol of hope and resilience, a testament to the strength of its people and their unwavering connection to the land. With a final contented sigh, Eliza turned to head back to the village. The snow continued to fall gently, covering the landscape in a pristine white blanket. The village lights twinkled in the distance, casting a warm glow that cut through the darkness of the winter night. As Eliza walked, she felt a sense of fulfillment and peace. The trials of the past had forged a stronger, more united community, and the future looked bright with promise and potential. She had seen her village overcome great adversity and emerge into the light, and she knew that its story would continue to inspire and guide those who heard it. And so, as the snow continued to fall and the village of Eldermore settled into its tranquil winter, the tale of its journey from darkness to light became a beacon of hope for all who sought to find balance and harmony in their own lives. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Eldermore, a story of courage, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between people and nature. We hope this tale of overcoming darkness and finding balance has inspired you as much as it has us. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more adventures and explorations into the realms of folklore and fantasy, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Share your thoughts in the comments below and let us know what other tales you'd like to hear. Until next time, may your own journey be filled with light and wonder. Remember, the strength to face any challenge lies within us all. And like the village of Eldermore, we can find harmony even in the darkest of times. Stay curious, stay inspired, and we'll see you in the next chapter.